cats and rats, pets of the isolated souls. I already had an awesome pet cat named Princess, and we'll talk more on her later. Princess was fantastic and perfect for me, but I wanted another pet after Red, Kelly, and Lady had died. I needed a pet to hold anytime, even when my independent Princess was adventuring or hunting outside. My mother had suggested a pet hamster or a few mice. My sisters jumped at the idea and asked that they could have mice themselves. My mother bought a mouse for each child, and one of them turned out to be pregnant, so there were a lot of mice. That experience kept happening until my mother decided that we had to take them to the vet, who directed my mother to a pet store to give them up for adoption, which turned out to be for snake food. On our delivery trip to the pet store, though, I saw a giant mouse, which was a large, short-haired white rat with bright, solid red eyes. He was wild-looking to me. I asked if he could be my pet. The rat was inexpensive, as no one wanted a scary, giant, red-eyed rat. People may have been right, though, because Red Eye, as I would name him simply, was mean. He scratched and bit constantly when picked up or held. Red Eye was a very grumpy rat. Regardless of my pet rat proving to be nothing but a chore, I committed to caring for him, and so I did. Years later, he became so sick, though, he was destined to die. And soon. Our family had very little money, and my mother had no intention of sinking money in the death of a rat. It was very sad to me. Even if I did not like Red Eye very much, I did love him as my pet. I saw Red Eye descend into suffering to the point that he could not walk. He was reminding me of Lady the dog. He ate less and less. I observed his water bottle stopped draining much. He was no longer drinking. He was wasting away. My mother suggested that he should be flushed down the toilet, like she had done with the mice before. Of course, he was big. I didn't even think he would fit. And flushing my rat down the toilet alive? That's heartless. But what could I do? I could only sit there and watch my rat suffer and suffer, knowing he would only eventually die. No! I decided that I had to free him from his torment, but I did not know how. Crush him with a rock? What if I failed and it just hurt even more? Get my parents to drive him over with their car? Gruesome. And what if they missed or again he suffered? I just didn't think they would do it anyway. But I think I made a mistake as a child. I have no idea what my alternatives were. I was in an awful place. Kill my pet somehow, or watch him suffer a long time and die anyway. The most painless and certain way to die I could think was maybe drowning poor Red Eye in a bucket of water. It was one of the only things that I could do. It was nightmarish as I held him underwater. I wanted every moment to abort my actions as I saw him gulp and struggle to breathe. His eyes widened and those red eyes faded. I cried. I felt his life end in my hands, and it was terrible. I hated myself and the world for putting my pet and me in that situation. And I hated my parents for leaving everything on me. No help, no moral support, nothing. This all happened in a rural area called San Martin. When we first moved into San Martin, the house that we moved in had junk left behind everywhere. I had found a fishing gear tackle box, a pistol holster, and a dozen or so live bullets. Apparently, the previous owner was a county deputy and had a careless attitude about ammunition, equipment, and sporting gear. I found treasures in the random things that he had left behind in that house and in its garage. I took the dented fish tackle box that was in the garage when we had moved into that house. Using the paint-worn greenish-blue metal box, I fashioned a coffin for Red Eye. I went out to an old covered horse stall that we never used and I dug a grave a few feet deep, and I placed Red Eye inside his metal tackle box coffin, and then the coffin down into its grave. Covering his box with the stall dirt and manure was easy, but tear-invoking. Even if he was not nice, I still lost a friend, and I had lost another companion. My mother was a magnet for stray animals. She would say that she hoped to be the Mother Teresa of the lost animals. She would leave food and water out for any neighborhood critter or raccoon to partake. She gladly let strays roam the property in search of food, water, or other things of interest. She removed the underhouse wire meshes that would shield animals and pests from going under the house, so that the little critters and animals could go there for shelter when it rained or was cold. She adopted many pets like this. 2 of them stood out to me: Smokey the Persian super thick gray-haired cat, and another one named Tanya that was a black and white striped large cat. Smokey loved to go into the attic and hunt mice. You would hear the little demons scurrying and fleeing as Smokey pounced and hunted, echoing from above. One day Smokey had a mouse in his mouth, dangling by its tail. We noticed the mouse was still alive, and Smokey was being abusive. He would walk and toss the mouse way up into the air and then try to catch it in its own mouth again. If he missed, it just slammed on the ground and he picked it up once more. He tossed it so forcefully on his final throw that the mouse flew high up and curved and landed into the kitchen sink. Most importantly, it did not come back down to the ground where Smokey could find it. He looked up, dismayed. Where did the mouse go? He sat for nearly 10 minutes until, apparently accepting, God took the mouse and marched away in search of a new toy. Smokey lived in a long, healthy life until he eventually died of natural causes. Tanya, the other cat, was a thin, large, black and white striped cat. She would go for days at a time hunting and would return with homage to my mother. A bird, a mouse, a gopher, a snake. Tanya nearly rivaled Princess in hunting prowess. Tragically, though, we heard a horrific yowl of meows coming from the kitchen door one morning. Opening that door revealed Tanya climbing the screen door, claws clutching through the mesh, crying and pleading for help. But opening the door made Tanya fall to the ground, unable to move. Tanya had been poisoned. My mother rushed Tanya to the vet. She decided that was worthy going to the vet, and she could not bear the horrific mewing and meowing, pleading for help. The vet said there was nothing to be done. Tanya was effectively dead the moment that she ate the rat poison. No one knows where or how she was poisoned. The vet speculated, though, the most likely case was that she ate a squirrel or a rat that had eaten rat trap poison, and thus she indirectly ate the poison and died. We all missed Tanya. She had a great personality and loved to be affectionate in between her hunting expeditions. During a visit to see our pony Thunderbolt, my eldest sister, Cynthia, saw a little white kitten wandering alone, seemingly abandoned, around Thunderbolt's water trough. She collected the kitten to protect it from potentially being stamped on, and asked around if anyone knew who it belonged to. The ranch owners said it was a mutt cat and should have been removed with the others, but apparently they often got kitten litters on the ranch and would get rid of them. Some of the cats they would keep in order to manage mice and pests, but this was not one of those cats. At some point, I guess, they had enough. So we were surprised to hear them then say, "Take the kitten if you want it, or it goes to the pound." My mother agreed, always having a soft spot for saving animals, and we took the white kitten home with us. Everyone argued with what we should name her, but my name stuck: Princess. She began her life with Cynthia dominating Princess's time. She would keep Princess with her all the time, to the point that no one really had much time at all with the kitten themselves. However, something happened. Princess was a good judge of character. Perhaps she sensed I needed comfort, a comfort support animal. She came around to me whenever Cynthia was not overtly holding her or keeping her in a closed room. Princess liked me a lot. I would pet her and talk to her and treat her like a person. Princess became my true friend. And she lived with me until she was 22 years old. That is an extraordinarily old age for a cat. Her life was full of adventure and excitement. She would climb up trees and wait patiently for a bird to fly below and leap down on them mid-flight. She would sit in front of gopher holes for days at a time, all through night, until a gopher would eventually pop up and she would get it. And she ate it entirely, bones and all, leaving only the very tip of a tail sometimes as evidence that it ever existed. She would deliver homage weekly of uneaten kills, apparently so that I could likewise eat them. Princess and I loved each other. She loved the outside. She loved sunlight. She loved to sit and bathe in the heat of the sun, whether outside or on a windowsill. Her love of the sun killed her, however. She first developed skin cancer on her ear flaps, which were surgically removed to save her life. She looked like a Rex species cat without ear flaps. Unfortunately, her sense of directional sound was lost, and so she became a little more scared and preferred to stay inside entirely. Although sad that Princess lost her ability to adventure outside, she was then living in a townhouse with me, so going outside was not that practical anyway. Whenever I moved, she would hide for about a week in a file cabinet drawer until she felt comfortable that it was safe in the new home with me. Many, many years after she had her ear flap removal surgery, she developed cancer on her nose. The vet this time said although they could remove her nose and attach an implant wire mesh nose, but he had never done it before, and he thought she may not handle such a thing well. But he did say she would be alive. Then he said, you could let her live out her life until it gets so bad and euthanize her. I opted for the latter. She'd been through so much already. Maybe 6 months later, Princess became so lethargic and blood was oozing from her eyes in the morning onto her white hair. She no longer mewed, too weak. My beloved Princess was dying, and there was nothing I could do about it. I cried so much. I took my Princess to the vet to free her from her suffering. I could not let her go alone, as the vet suggested. I went with her and held her paw as she was injected with a so-called painless lethal injection. She extended her paw as her eyes glazed and dimmed to oblivion. Princess was gone. Her corpse remained. I paid for a helicopter to spread her ashes across Lake Tahoe and the hillsides. I loved my Princess.